Hello friends, today I'm going to teach you how to make a block pattern. What is a block pattern? A block pattern is a base pattern that you can turn into any pattern for anything that you're sewing. And how it works is you have a fitted piece of fabric over your torso, and once you've got that all fitted and sewn, then you can draw lines onto it and cut them out, and you can have any pattern that you desire. Today I'm going to teach you how to get started with a block pattern. I use block patterns for pretty much everything I sew, and I was hoping that this tutorial would be helpful to you because I feel like I'm not very helpful when it comes to the patterns that I use, but patterns are probably the most important part of the project. They are the foundation from which you sew whatever you're sewing, and they are very, very useful. Okay, so to make a basic block pattern, what you're going to need is some material, preferably a cotton or something sturdy. You don't want to use anything too stretchy or slippery because you don't want that to deform the shapes that you're going to be making. Like this used to be a bed sheet and I've used it for a couple mock-ups, but you can just go to the thrift store, pick up a bed sheet or something, or some curtains. Don't think that you need to spend a ton of money on mock-up fabric. Like literally just use whatever you have on hand. I'm going to use this shirt to make my pattern. This works best with a button-up shirt or something you have that has a high neckline and the arm side, or the part where the sleeve is attached to the body. So like this part of the shirt. But you can see that this is cut on an angle and the sleeve is a different shape. And so for a block pattern you want a very basic, like standard sleeve shape, so some shirts don't work. But you want the one that kind of, something that curves. Yeah, I would recommend just a button-up shirt, something that covers most of your skin. And you can use a shirt that's kind of loose-fitting or one that is more form-fitting. You kind of just want it to have just a little bit of space for you to play around with so that you can get the absolute best fit. The reason why I like using this shirt is because, as you can see, there's no curves in it. It just goes straight down. Like this is just a rectangle. And so that's a very basic shape we can work with. Once you have your shirt all buttoned up, you are going to fold it in half. Make sure that you fold it in half correctly. You can find the side seam of your garment and match that up with the other side seam. So as you can see, I have folded my shirt in half, and the fabric is also folded in half, so I will get two of these when I cut it out. What I'm going to do actually is move the shirt just a little bit away from the edge, about ½ an inch. This is going to give you just a little bit of fabric to overlap in the front, and then you're going to pin it. You just want this extra space here. I don't really know how to explain it. I guess we just go for it. If you like, you can trace. You can also mark it with pins. I just kind of bubble cut it, and I leave about ½ inch around the shirt. Now when we come to this collar bit, this is going to be a bit tricky because I think what I'm going to do is just fold the collar inside the shirt so that it's out of the way. For this I'm just going to kind of do my best. So as you can see, there's just like a slight curve there. And this I'm actually not going to leave ½ an inch. It can be hard to see where you're cutting right here. So I sometimes take just a pin, mark where the collar ends, and then I'll just move the shirt like that. And then I'll just kind of eyeball it and make a little curve tapering. Tapering means you're kind of curving it off, but like you can do the same over here with the sleeves. Put that pin there. Another thing I like to do is, if I want to figure out how deep the sleeve is, I'll just put my finger in this little middle of the sleeve, flip the sleeve up, and where my finger is, I'll just mark it with a pin as well. What's strange about this shirt is like it has a very flat arm side, and so this I'm just going to kind of cut and taper it off at this pin here. As long as you're leaving enough room around the pattern, you'll have enough room to work with. And this is a mock-up, or this is a practice, so it's okay to make mistakes. And you'll eventually just develop an eye for how much fabric you need and what kind of shapes you need to cut out. Alright, I'm moving down the shirt, and I'm just going to cut. For this, I'm not going to follow this half circle thing. might make it curve a little bit. I don't care. Basically, you want to make your block pattern long enough that it goes just past the hips. And so you should end up with a shape somewhat like this. So as you can see, it basically just looks like a very, very baggy shirt. I'd probably cut that in a little bit more. Anyway, but this is enough to work with. So cut out another one of these for the back. After cutting that out, I ironed it, and now you're going to sew up the sides and the shoulder seams. Because you will most likely be unpicking your stitches, you can loosen the tension and lengthen your stitches and skip the back stitching so that the thread is easier to pull out later. Then I folded it in half and cut down the front of just one layer of fabric. This will allow me to have an opening to put it on. The first thing I'm going to do is overlap my front bits about an inch or so and pin that in place. Alright, so I've got that pinned, and one thing you can actually do is carefully pin it to the clothes that you're wearing underneath to keep it from shifting around while you're pinning everywhere else. Sometimes I just like to keep a pin like at the bottom so that this doesn't ride up while I'm pinning, especially when you're pinning this by yourself. Sometimes if you raise your arm, it can throw off your other seams, so it helps if it's somehow secured. So there are a couple places that you can take this in, but what is most natural is you have your side seams, which are these seams at the side. You have your shoulder seams, the seams at the shoulders. And then you of course have your front, your back, the center front and center back. And then you have side front and side back. And that is just going to be halfway between your side seam and your center seam, which could be center front or center back. One good way that you can find this is by just putting your hands like so, and then walking your fingers until they meet in the middle. This is going to be your side front seam, and you can take it in from there. And when you're taking in your block pattern, you kind of just want to take it in wherever the fabric naturally wants to fold, but our job basically is to make this as snatched as possible. I usually like to start at the side seam because that is where you can take in most of the bulk. So try and make sure that this seam is as flat as possible and that you're taking in an equal amount of fabric from both sides. So far what I've done is I've only taken it in from the shoulder seams and the side seams and then the side front seams. As you can see, if I lay these flat, it's already starting to be a bit more flattering. I really recommend that you do these center front seams if you want your, this side of your silhouette to look very neat, I suppose. Another thing that I've done is I've taken a marker and I've marked where the fabric needs to be cut away because this shoulder is a bit too long and the neck is a bit too long as well. For this one, I don't need to take anything from the center back, but I will probably take in, just kind of pinch it at these side back seams. Okay, so I just removed this, and as you can see, some of the pins have slid out. So just carefully readjust those. Usually you'll be able to put them back in because you can see where the pin pricks were. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I would just adjust that. There we go. Alright, now let's take a look at that back. This is what we have to work with. This is kind of where it tapers off. I think that's so funny because, it looks terrible, obviously. Sometimes this works better than others. Ideally, you probably should just have somebody else pin the back for you, but I do what I can. I'm just going to fold that on the center back and just kind of pin something that makes sense to me. Basically, you're going to try your best with what you've marked here. I mean, when I pinched this, I just felt that there was maybe half an inch that needed to be taken in. Okay, first we're going to sew up the side seam. When you're doing this, make sure that you're sewing a straight line to the waistline and a straight line away from the waistline. So you're gonna end up with 2 straight lines going inward like this. So about here is my waist, so I'm going to twist it and sew all the way to the end. Next is the shoulder seam. This is my side front seam. This one is allowed to be a little curved if you need it to be. I'm going to do the bust dart. And lastly, the side back seams. So I've waited till daylight, so hopefully you can see this a bit better, but this is what it looks like turned with the seams facing inward, and as you can see, it's much more snug, much more fitted. And from here, you can just draw any pattern lines that you want onto this bodice. You can cut it apart, and there you go. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm using this pattern to make a corset, so what I would do for this is just draw my corset pattern and then cut it out, leaving a little gap at the back for the lacing gap. Well, I hope this video was helpful, and if you want to learn how to make a corset, you can check out my next video, which is coming out shortly, where I will be trying to explain in the best and most simplest way possible how to make a corset, which I hope will be a more beginner-friendly video. But yes, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Love you, bye. Some shirts, like this one, are excuse the armpits, they're like really discolored. So today I'm just going to teach you how I get started with my block patterns, excuse me. Oof. Sometimes you just need to make things up, okay? That's how I do it. Today I'm going to teach you how. And now you may be wondering, why am I making things up? What am I saying? Like, is it safe to be guessing?